to another episode of Hard Factor presented by the Barstool News Network. It is Thursday, June 11th, 2020. We have a packed show, news stories up front, interview with the Dutch Hammer in the back. Wes, get us going.
All right, guys, got some new developments in the George Floyd tragedy. First, his brother spoke to the House Judiciary Committee for an oversight hearing on policing and law enforcement accountability yesterday. It was extremely sad. He painted the picture for everyone in that room and the world of what it was like to lose a brother in that way, saying, quote, "I can't tell you the kind of pain you feel when you watch something like that, when you watch your big brother, who you looked up to your whole entire life, died begging for his mom." So, yeah, just a very sad, sad
as it gets, honestly.
Sad as it gets. He called the death a modern-day lynching of his brother in broad daylight, and pointed out that until his last breath, his brother called the officers sir, even as they killed him, calling him a gentle giant, and pleaded to lawmakers, saying, quote, "George called for help and he was ignored. Please listen to the call I'm making to you now, to the calls of our family and the calls ringing out in the streets across the world," saying his brother did not deserve to die for $20, referring to that he was stopped for the counterfeit $20 bill. He went on to say, quote, "Making the necessary changes to make law enforcement the solution and not the problem," is what he was after. So powerful stuff. Hopefully some of it got through.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, strong statements from the Floyd family, who's been, handling the situation incredibly well, I think, considering the amount of, the magnifying glass they've been under ever since this has happened. So
for sure. It's awful. And just a heads up, the whole episode today is more of a serious one, as Wes started us out with that. And then we end with a 30-minute interview from 20-year police officer retired for disability, Dutch Hammer. So, but the radio show today is hilarious.
Radio show.
We have an interview with we have an interview with KB, or we have a debate with KB and Nick. So that's going to be hilarious.
Hey, don't poo-poo the pod. Hey, pod listeners, you guys got a ride ahead of you.
Oh,
it's
no,
a good show.
No.
Look, this is a good show, and it's needed news. What else is going on in that front, Wes?
Let's keep it going with some other developments. Another news, a new person has emerged supporting the claims by the Floyd family that the relationship between Chauvin, the cop that killed him, and Floyd was not a great one, and that the death was a personal one. David Pinney, who worked with Chauvin and Floyd at the same time at that Minneapolis nightclub where they both worked, said, quote, "They bumped heads. It was a lot. It has a lot to do with the Derek being extremely aggressive within the club with some of the patrons, which was an issue. So Floyd did not like how Chauvin handled himself with the patrons in there."
Oh, you don't say.
Chauvin got hired, which happens with police a lot, to do security when he was off duty. So, like, a lot of times, on movie sets or clubs, they'll hire a cop, pay him $65 an hour or whatever. And he was a bouncer.
So you're saying, Floyd. So you're saying Chauvin, who had 18 violent strikes against him, was also rude and violent to the nightclub customers?
Yeah, he just wasn't a nice guy.
Guy sounds like a piece of shit. Yeah.
What a shock that is, right?
Exactly. Even the owner, Maya Santa Maria, the owner of the club, which has since been burned down, has also remarked he believes Chauvin had a problem with black people and that he was intimidated by and afraid of them. So interesting.
I saw that interview. That was like the on the first weekend of protesting they were talking.
I believe it.
Yeah,
me too. And finally, Cops gets canceled, and now Live PD is in some serious shit after they destroyed footage / evidence of some Williamson County, Texas police officers killing a man while in their custody. So what happened is back in March 2019, Javier Ambler, while being arrested for a traffic violation, was killed by taser, pleading for his life while the cameraman taped the incident. So they tasered him like 3 times, and then they tasered him a 4th time, and that killed him.
That can kill you, a taser.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Less lethal.
We talked about that before. Like, with our hearts, it would probably kill us if we got tased 4 times. Yeah,
absolutely. So it's fucked
I'm
up.
careful around outlets with the shape that we're in, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no electricity for us. So show representatives say they cannot hand the tape of the murder over to investigators because they destroyed it. They destroyed the evidence. And let me tell you, I worked in TV. If you destroy a tape, you know you're doing something wrong, especially if it's of something like that.
Cancel this show, too. If they destroyed this tape, cancel the show too.
Well, live
Someone
PD
was saving their own ass.
Live PD's worse than cops, honestly. So if they cancel
not nearly as good in my opinion as well. Well, I agree with you.
Also, electricity. I'm swapping out light fixtures over here, willy nilly, left and right.
Be careful, Will. Hey, use those metal mesh gloves I sent you. The rubber with the rubber lining. Use those.
Nope. Just bare hand them. Yep.
Birthday present goes to waste, guys. Here's a terrible and confusing headline for you. Pregnant elephant explodes after accidentally eating a fruit stuffed with explosives.
Jesus Christ.
She's pregnant too? That's not good.
Yeah, I know. All right, Indian police arrested a man on... No, I know. Unless you hate elephants, but who does? Indian police on Friday arrested a man after it was determined that this man had filled a pineapple to the brim with explosives, and that a 15-year-old elephant, who is unfortunately not trained to identify bombs, ate the tasty treat, but got more than just the explosion of flavor that she was expecting. After the tart treat detonated inside of her body, the elephant was unable to eat, probably out of fear that all food was now combustible, and tragically died related to those complications. Apparently, what the man
This episode was brought to you by Jimmy John's.
Jimmy John's, yeah. When it's big and it's endangered, we kill it.
Blow it up.
Apparently, what the man was trying to do is create what's called a bait bomb, which is typically used to kill stupid, smelly wild boars and not cute, majestic elephants. The state forest department announced the arrest and said it was investigating whether he was a poacher or farmer who wanted to kill the elephant to prevent it from damaging his crops. Terrible shit. I do want to point out the hypocrisy of it being okay to use a bomb to kill one animal who everyone hates, but if you kill another animal with that bomb, then everyone gets pissed off. Come on.
Well, I mean, everybody loves an elephant. Nobody likes a hog.
Right.
That's true. Take it to the internet, y'all. Mamie says, the guy who did this should be charged for double homicide, should be hanged until death. Please, guys, a lesson should be taught. Animals are treated worst in our country. It's a cold-blooded murder. Hashtags Elephant Lives Matter. Hashtags Justice for Elephant.
Can you imagine a jury of 12 elephants?
Oh, bro.
Well, they'd be wise, though. They'd be wise. They'd never forget a single fact. You know who's looked really bad through this whole thing? Vegans. Just in general. The animals, trying to equate animals to people during this whole past few months has been...
Totally. Don't fuck with animals, but guys, we are animals, humans, and there is a food chain, unfortunately.
I thought you were going to say because they're too weak to protest.
Yeah, they're anemic. Need iron.
There's lots of fronts, why vegans are having trouble. But
shout out Pat and Maya's dad, vegans.
Hey, all right.
Look, the health choice can be great, but like when you start getting on your high horse and you start like high horsing everybody with your veganism, that's
true.
Not in this environment.
I'm not going to argue with. I think my pop dropped acid and then became a vegan, so I'm not going to argue with what he saw. Okay.
Well, all I'm saying is just chill out on the people and animals are the same thing until like August. Just give it a rest,
My dad beat cancer with veganism, so as much as I make fun of it,
Yeah.
So essentially,
Will
is shitting on your dad's cancer recovery there. So
kind of.
There's many positives.
Thanks, Will.
There's many positives, but the high horsing is a negative, and I'm gonna stick with that.
Hey, what's up with that
assessment.
What's up with that NASCAR shit, Willie?
That's right. So some good news. On Wednesday, NASCAR formally banned Confederate flags at any of their properties and races. Period. We're talking about the race teams, the fans. No more stars and bars. So I mean, that's it basically.
Hold on.
Confederate flag. Where else would you fly one?
Does this apply to clothing though? Because they're gonna have a real problem.
Well, interesting. No, I think just the flag, the clothing. Well, you probably can't wear it on anything. No, I'm guessing the clothing too, Pat. I do not.
That first year's gonna be great because there's gonna be a lot of people that are like, "Hey, man, you got to take that off." Or
right, they have not clarified how they're going to enforce this. So
how are they going to find racist Rick's camp in the infield? Always looking for the Confederate flag. Find old Rick.
I hate to do this to you, honey, but that Confederate flag bikini top, it's got to come off.
Well, and then you gotta see it's SEC country, so you got to think about all the Confederate flags that are school colors because there's tons of those in the South. So then, what are they going to do with those ones too? It's a lot to think about. But in general, the Confederate flag, it lost, right? Like I grew up in a family where the Confederacy wasn't necessarily thought of as inferior. They thought of it as like a military pride thing. Stonewall Jackson was a hero of mine as a kid. He's a Confederate general. But his best friend, James Reno, fought on the right side of the American Army during the Civil War, and that's why he's got a city named after him. And Stonewall, although a badass name, does not have a city named after him. The Confederates lost. Face facts. We're all Americans and not Confederates because Abe Lincoln was correct to end slavery. So just, maybe retire the old stars and bars. It's over.
The troll here is going to be the Mississippi flag. That's what people are going to do. They're going to hang the Mississippi flag, which has a Confederate flag in it. See what I'm saying? And they're going to say, what do you mean, man? That's a Mississippi flag, not a Confederate flag.
Yeah.
Is it still?
Yeah, pretty sure.
People hold on to this thing pretty tightly, Mark. So I doubt that NASCAR will be.
You are right, Pat.
And they're trying to remove it actively. They're trying to remove it right now. They're oh God, Mississippi, Jesus.
Well, and also I think Florida or Georgia, I forget. There's several Southern flags that resemble the Confederate flag. But anyways, the no more at NASCAR and stars and bars. It's over. Probably just hang it up. Everybody should be, red, white, and blue, stars and stripes. In other news, the Democrats, are calling for the removal of all Confederate statues in the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, which is funny since all the statues are of Democrats. So,
And NASCAR people have already said they're not going to go to NASCAR if they can't. They're going to fucking go to NASCAR even if the flags aren't there. That's
what a dumb
huge
protest.
Huge party.
I'm not going to go to NASCAR because
they're going to be there.
Fly my Confederate flag. That's
heritage, not hate.
Yeah.
Right. There's going to be a lot of heritage, not hate. There's also going to be a lot of Confederate flags still, is my guess, for the first couple of years where they figured out how the hell they're going to police that because they have not announced. Right. So the Dems want to take down the statues of the Confederates in the Capitol, who were Democrats themselves. Uncoincidentally, President Trump thinks that they shouldn't even rename the names of bases, military bases that are named after Confederates. He wants the historical reminder there, and that it's not worth it to be changed. So that's what's going on with the Confederate memorabilia all over the U.S.
What's with the heritage and the needing to remember history? If you're on the wrong side of history, why can't you just?
I think it's just family connection, right?
Who gives a fuck?
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about your fucking great grandfather that was a racist? It's 6 generations ago, 5 generations. Fuck off.
Well,
4 generations ago.
Probably
interestingly enough, Mark, and this is even more to your argument. A woman died last week who was still receiving her dad's Civil War pension. So it was the last Civil War checks being cut.
Aren't we supposed to learn from history?
Well, there you go. It's done.
Name these bases. Yeah, name these fucking bases after good things. Who gives a flying fuck?
Well, he's saying they're already named.
Yeah. Who gives a fuck? You can change names of things.
Well, it costs money.
Costs money, Mark.
You're going to pay to change that sign?
It's going to piss a lot of people off, Mark.
Why?
Yeah, it is kind of lame that they define their grandfathers exclusively by their military service.
Why?
Remember them in a different way.
They know it pisses off a lot of people. They should just get with the fucking program and maybe.
Okay.
Stars and Stripes. We're a Stars and Stripes podcast. Stars and Stripes all the way.
That's right.
All right. Have you guys ever needed the perfect gift but didn't know what to get? I mean,
yes.
Exactly, right? All the time. Yeah. A big occasion, like an important anniversary, something like that. There's only one move that you can make in that situation, and that's paintyourlife.com, who will send you an original painting. I'm talking about painted by hand, by a world-class artist, done from hand, just from a photo, your favorite photo, whatever you want to send them, and they will do it masterfully. Okay. If you want to give a truly meaningful gift, you've got to try paintyourlife.com. Get a professional hand-painted portrait created from any photo that you want, your favorite picture. Mark's going to do all of his cats. He might even dress them up like they're playing poker or something like that. And then he sends it in. And then it's a truly affordable price. Paintyourlife.com, they get you that painting back of your favorite picture, and they get it to the important people that you need the gift to get to. Quick and easy process. Get a hand-painted portrait in about 3 weeks. Send any picture, yourself, your children, cats, family, spouse, whatever, or combine multiple photos for the perfect masterpiece. At paintyourlife.com, there is no risk. If you don't love the final painting, your money is refunded. Incredible. Guaranteed. And right now, as a limited time offer, get 20% off your painting. That's pretty good. That's right, 20% off and free shipping. That's also good considering you're going to get a big painting and you're going to want that free shipping. To get this special offer, text the word FACTOR to 64,000. That's FACTOR to 64,000. Text FACTOR to 64,000. Paint your life. Celebrate the moments that matter most.
And I just want to point one thing out. If you're in the dating pool right now, this is a really good investment because there's nothing that says this guy is marriage material than when a lady walks in your house and sees a large oil painting of you over your couch or in your living room. I mean, she will really be who is this guy?
It's very impressive. It's a check in the pro column for sure. So heavy show, guys. Heavy year, right? But I have some good news for you. Something that will surely go well in 2020. And I cannot possibly jinx it by talking about it right now. That is the PlayStation 5 is coming out at the end of the year, right?
Really?
Right?
Come on. I just got my Call of Duty download update on PS4, and now there's a new. Okay,
6 months. 6 months from now, and there will be Call of Duty on this PlayStation 5 in much, much better
cross
graphics.
compatibility.
Yep, cross compatibility as well. Today at 1 p.m., Sony will reveal the design, the price, the release date, and all available games for the PlayStation 5. Nothing will go wrong with the stream. The price will be extremely affordable. I'm thinking $150, right? COVID pricing. And the games will be plentiful. There will be a new Skyrim, as well as Bethesda's new outer space RPG Starfield. Final Fantasy VII Remake second part will be ready to go. NCAA football will be brought back.
No,
that's not true. That's not true. You're just going to have to tune into the stream at 1 p.m. today or read about it after to find out what exactly Sony's telling you about the PlayStation 5. Personally, though, I don't care if it costs $800, which it's widely rumored to cost.
But
I'm getting it. It's rumored to cost $765. I'm getting it. It's a new system, guys. This happens like once every 7-ish years. That's like 2 Olympics of the same season. 2 cycles of it. And also 2 is the amount of terabytes the hard drive will have. That's like probably 3 PlayStation 5 games you can have going on at the same time in your hard drive. I don't care. I don't care that the new Xbox X is rumored to be $150 less because it's an Xbox. If I was given a free Xbox X, I would still buy a PlayStation 5, and I would probably return the Xbox X to a GameStop for credit to the to PlayStation 5, or try to sell it on like eBay or whatever. Or Craigslist, because I don't want the Xbox X. I want the PlayStation 5. PlayStation 5 is coming.
When's the Xbox X coming out?
That's good news. Same time, but who fucking cares?
I want to check this thing out. I'm going to see. I'm a PlayStation guy now, but I might be able to be swayed if it's not $765.
PlayStation 5 is going to be magical.
You were a GameCube guy, Will. That was bold.
Yeah.
Well, I've been 360. I've been PS3, PS4.
You've always been a contrarian. You've been a contrarian when it comes to systems.
I can go back and forth.
I appreciate that about you.
Xbox and Mountain Dew for Will. Okay, but now we have an interview with the Dutch Hammer. All right, I'd like to introduce to the show a longtime listener of the show and a retired police officer of the Mattoon Police Department in Illinois, David Vanderpoort. David was a police officer for 20 years. He has joined the show today to have a conversation with us about what's going on with law enforcement, and to talk about kind of the state of affairs of that world from a perspective of a retired police officer. So welcome to the show, David.
Thanks, sir. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Yeah.
Good to have you. Some of our listeners may know you by your other name. We're going to go by David today, but this is the Dutch Hammer.
That's correct.
May have been playing along.
That is correct. This is the Dutch Hammer. So welcome to the show. I mean, this is a bit of a serious conversation. Yeah. It's not as much fun as the voicemails and stuff we've had in the past, because things have escalated quickly after the George Floyd incident, which was a terrible and disgusting incident. So, I think we each have a couple questions, and we'll just want to have a conversation with you.
Yes.
Does anyone want to jump in there with a question?
Well, I think first and foremost, so David has a book. You want to tell us about your book?
Sure. So about 2 years ago, well, first of all, I'm a retired / disabled police officer. I was disabled in the line of duty. It'll be 4 years in July. But, I hit some pretty hard times mentally, and, I was going through a lot of things. Lost my identity. I was a police officer for 20 years. Now what am I going to do? So... Right. Kind of as a therapeutic endeavor, I just started writing some things down, that either I had seen, other police officers had spoke to me about, things like that. And one morning I was having coffee with an old former college professor, and he suggested we try to make a book out of it. And that's Dr. Roger Whitlow, who's he wrote the intro to the book. But it turned into a book. And man, little did I know when I released it in mid-May, the times were going to, change drastically.
Yes, interesting timing.
Oh, wow, Yeah. No kidding.
Reading your book, one thing that struck me was that cops are constantly around domestic violence and violence on the street. And so, one thing I used to live around the cop world a little bit back when I was in Texas. And do you think that maybe all the violence that police are around all the time, some cops become very comfortable with it? After a point in time, or they're just not dealing with it right? And do you think that there's a way to like enforce mental health treatment on an entire force in a way that you could sort of combat that, how much constant trauma that police are dealing with all the violence around them all the time?
Well, that's an excellent question. And the violence that police officers see every day, there is no way that it can't affect you somehow, some way. You can go into the job being, the most sound of mind and body. And then after, I say about every 4 years, a police officer hits kind of a wall. I saw it happen to many of my coworkers and other police officers that I've talked to. You kind of hit a wall where you get burnt out, all that stuff, the domestics, the dead babies, the car accident, you name it. It just piles up,
Right.
To get to the other part of your question, I don't know that there's a way you can force any type of mental health training on a police department simply because of the unions. And, most police departments have a pretty strong union, but they have to do in-service training every year, at least here in Illinois. And you could make it part of mandatory in-service training every year, just even a couple hours. Or
just creep it in somewhere. It seems like it would help.
Well, that's an interesting point. I was thinking about that. Like, so it's kind of referenced in your book. You start with this like super like positive mentality of saving the world, and then at some point you become like numb to it almost.
You do.
Do you think that like kind of like career politicians or an industry like that, maybe at a certain time you should maybe have at least a sabbatical, like a year off, or maybe just not even be allowed to be a police officer and have to move into like a different area than being like a beat cop after like 5-10 years or something like that? Do you think something like that could help by not having consistently be working as a police officer for a very, very long period of time? Is there anything like that?
Well, there are, several different units within departments. So it may not be a bad idea to move, people around within different units, but I've never really thought about it, if a police officer were taking a sabbatical, but I think more than anything, counseling would help every single one, every single police officer, no matter how little the counseling it is,
Do you think that police officers would be open to that? If it was available to them? And maybe like some cops are, I don't know, stereotyping, tough guys and might not want to sit on a couch and talk to a shrink, about their personal lives. Some of this stuff is hard to talk about. But do you think that's something that cops would be open to from your experience and willing to do if it was available to them?
No. Unfortunately, no. I mean, you would probably, now there are several that would, I don't want to paint all of them with a broad brush because certainly that's not the case here. But I would say that, no matter what the training is, we used to complain. I'd be like, oh man, I got to go to this training, I go to that training, unless it was, something fun like firearms training. But as far as the mental health training goes, nothing right now, as far as I know, unless it's changed just very recently, there's nothing that says a police officer must do this for their, their mental wellness. Now, twice a year, you have to qualify with your firearm. You have to be able to carry it. If you fail the firearms qualification, guess what? You don't get to carry the firearm. So
yeah, what's more important in your opinion for a cop, a good brain or a good gun?
It's got to be the brain, because I guarantee my brain got me out of countless situations as a police officer, and thank the Lord, I never had to fire my gun at someone.
Oh, nice.
In the line of duty, did I have to
But
draw it? Yes.
You did get stabbed and attacked with baseball bats and all sorts of other
fights,
stuff. Yeah. That is really interesting what you just said, though. It seems like the training is focused on being a good shot versus being sound of mind.
Yeah. Well, even hand-to-hand combat training, there's not, that's rare too. And you're putting hands on folks every shift, damn near every shift, and many times a shift, whether it be, to control them or just to put handcuffs on them. Okay. But there's no mandatory training for that per se, but twice a year you got to, and I agree, you got to do that firearms training, but why can't we put in some mental wellness training also?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the physical contact. Yeah.
Makes sense.
The mental health training seems to be like a solution to the problem that we haven't addressed yet, because it's it's on the top of and on the tip of everyone's tongue in America and around the world right now, right?
Yeah.
Let's address what the problem is. What causes the problem, not what a solution to the problem is. Do you think that there's a situation where? Well, I guess the first question would be: do you feel that African American people are justified in their anger and frustration that they're demonstrating based upon the way they've been treated by the police force at large, in your experience?
Yes, absolutely, 100%. I mean, it's gone on too long. There have been too many African Americans killed by police officers in this country. One that was struck close to home was in Ferguson, by St. Louis. Was it probably 6 years ago now? And I remember.
Yeah, Michael Brown.
What's that?
Michael Brown, I think, right?
Yeah. Yes. And, there were demonstrations in the streets, people and all around the country, riots, demonstrations. Nothing got solved. As far as I know, nothing got changed from that. And now here we are again. And in between that, Mr. Brown and Mr. Floyd, how many others?
And why do you think that happens? Right. I mean, so I guess I think the big question everyone's having in their mind is it a situation where there are police who are racist and they're unaware of it? They're bringing prejudices into a scenario where they see a black person and maybe subconsciously or consciously assume this person's different or more dangerous, or I need to be quicker with the trigger here.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Or there might be a different scenario. I mean, I feel like it absolutely is correct, and some people have brought up the point in some respects that the reason that black people get shot is because their influence in some respects is not as strong. It's like you can't shoot a white guy, you can't mistreat a white guy because they might be connected to government. They might be connected to law. If they cry, people are going to listen. Whereas a lot of times the African American community is marginalized and not listened to.
I've heard that too, but in the heat of the moment, you're not thinking that this person is black, this person is white. Now, and I don't know those officers in Minneapolis, they may not have a racist bone in their body, but the fact of the matter is the one was responsible for killing a black man in broad daylight on video.
After being begged not to for 8 minutes. Yeah, that's pretty tough. I
know a lot of other police officers, 99.9% of us are good folks, don't have a racist bone in our body. But as Pat was asking, are there some that may be racist? Well, I do think absolutely. Just like in any other profession, you're going to have folks that are assholes or racist, this sort of thing. It just gets exacerbated when, there's a police officer involved in any situation, but let alone the type of situations that we've seen, across America for many years now.
Another thing you talked about in your book was about the cop culture. I like the chapters about the bikers and Marines, the similarities there, and then also like the gang members in the prison and like how their structure was similar. It struck me as very similar to athletics, cops, military, any type of organization like that where it's got sort of a more macho culture. And so do you think that sometimes maybe the stresses or the pressure of being in that type of a culture can also raise the likelihood of somebody, doing something stupid that's way too aggressive, like you see sometimes on the street?
If I understand your question correctly, it is like, I guess it'd be like a football locker room, but we all get to carry guns and badges,
Right.
So
right, yeah. I guess what I was asking about is it a culture issue, and how does that culture issue?
It has a similar culture to other macho cultures, which include organizations that aren't enforcing the law are doing good, right?
Sure.
Similar to maybe like more of like an organized crime is, there you see a lot of similarities from people who are in the same line of work.
Yeah.
And when you're in that pressure cooker, can it create a situation where it's much easier to fuck up, basically?
I think so. And I think, that pressure just, fear is contagious. I think we all know that. And, we've seen it with some of the riots, fear is contagious. Cops are get scared too. We're human. If, we're going on a traffic stop, the person that we pull over is going to be scared, no doubt. I mean, hell, if I get pulled over, I'm scared still to this day. My heart, boom, 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 boom. And
there's a good chance I have weed in the car. Will too, probably. It's like, you may have forgotten about it. Yeah.
I'm always scared. I'm like, I should have had weed in the car. Oh, I don't. Okay, good.
But so if they're scared and the police officer is also scared, whether they want to admit it or not, there's still, there's going to be some fear because you don't know when you're walking up to that car what you're going to come. You may come upon somebody with an AK-47. But
I've been watching a lot of. So, here's another kind of disparity I'm trying to wrap my head around. I've been watching a lot of videos. I think we all have, dash cam videos, body cam videos in the last couple weeks, right?
Yeah.
And absolutely, there's a lot of instances where there's a multiracial police force, right, exhibiting vulgar acts of power over humans that don't need to be. It's not always just a white officer on a black officer, et cetera.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of instances as well. And obviously, these are going to be predominantly more easily accessible on the internet, but instances where a cop is walking up to a human and the human turns and fires on them in a way that you never would have expected, right?
Yeah.
That does happen, and that's not on the police force. That's our
why you're
country's
trained,
culture.
Yeah, that's why you're trained to shoot and have your firearm ready, which is part of the issue.
Yeah, so how often does that happen? So we know that it's a real possibility when a police officer is walking up on a human who may just have a traffic violation, right? There's a chance that human, and it's not unheard of, that human is going to draw a weapon on you.
Sure.
And that creates a culture of fear, absolutely, for the police, I think. How often does that happen? Is that those incidents that we're just seeing because they're salacious right now, or is that pretty common?
Where you walk up and they have an actual gun, or
or something like that. Something completely unexpected happens that threatens your life at no fault of your own when you're in the line of duty.
It's very rare, but I will say this: we prepare for the worst. Police officers have to prepare for the worst. You have to think that we don't. When I walk up to that car, there might be somebody in there with a firearm, but there's ways to do that without, being a total tool about it.
Goes back to the training.
It goes back to the training, and who's doing the training? Do they have the qualifications to even be doing the training? There used to be a joke that if you were 50 miles from home, you were an expert on something, you know, and I'm
right.
like, okay. So it didn't matter how many years you had on. If you were just some guy that got appointed chief because you knew the mayor, you were more than 50 miles from home, so you can teach on this. But no, it all goes back to the training. You know, you need to have that in the back of your mind. Yes, there could be, you know, some nefarious folks in this car, but guess what? To answer your question, Pat, it doesn't happen that often. Mm-hmm. But you have to prepare yourself for like it does, or like it's going to. But beyond that, these are human beings in these cars. This is somebody's brother. This is somebody's sister, somebody's mother, somebody's father. Treat them like a human being first, okay? And then if something pops off, obviously be ready for it. Be ready to deal with that situation. But you can't just, as soon as you pull over and hop out of your squad car, immediately think, hey, that's Al Capone in that car. Get ready. Here we go. You just,
yeah.
And unfortunately, I think that it's been sensationalized in the media and on TV and everything. So a rookie cop might just do just that if he's not trained well. Mm-hmm. You know?
So in my experience with police, which I've had a lot because I'm a bit of a drinker, I went to college, spent like 3 or 4 nights in the drunk tank in 3 or 4 different cities.
How dare you?
Yeah, I probably, I mean, to me, it seems like in 20 interactions with cops face to face, about, 85% of them are incredibly nice people, and maybe 15% of them are a bit of aggressive assholes that, and I think that ratio is fairly common in most lines of work. But the issue at hand being, let's shift it from my drunk ass back to African American culture and brutality against them. In your book, you have a chapter called Bigot, and you have a chapter called Brotherhood. And the police force obviously is a brotherhood, right? Like no one knows what's going on like other fellow police officers. You can only really talk with them about it. You have this common bond. At the same time, there are bigots in the police force, without a doubt. Now, not a high percentage of them, but there are. You even wrote about it in your book. Yeah. It's hard to, almost like, I don't want to call it snitch on them, but it's how do you weed these people out? As there were probably bigots in every profession, but with the police force, you can't have that because they have a gun, they have this authority. How do you try to have a culture where you have a brotherhood, but you get rid of the bigots?
Well, I was lucky enough to never work with anyone that I felt was a straight up bigot, but we all know that there are bigots out there. I'd be sitting here lying to you guys if I tried to say there ain't one cop that's a bigot, Yeah,
the secondhand story in the book was intense. That was one of the craziest
with the teenagers or the not preteens. Yeah, that was intense.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I won't tell you exactly who told me the story, but there are parts of that story that are true. Now, it's from so many years ago, but I felt it, and keep in mind, I wrote this book. That chapter was probably written 1.5 years ago, but they're there. Bigots are there. Now, how do we weed them out? Good question. I think it's not okay, and we have to make it not okay. Something has to change. And
do you think the bill, have you looked at the bill at all? They're going to create this like database for people who have had incidents that may be racially charged, I guess, or over violent, and that then they can't be transferred to other precincts, stuff like that. Do you think that'll help the issue?
Yeah, I think that if we can, if it's a legitimate reason they're fired, and it's followed up with an investigation, and it wasn't just somebody getting railroaded. Absolutely, those people don't need to be police officers. I don't know what profession they need to be in, but if you're a bigot and a racist,
or even power hungry, right?
Can I want to touch on one of the chapters in your book.
Well,
you're
certainly,
sitting next to.
And you add power. You there?
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah. Finish that thought. We're syncing back up. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, I was done, I think.
Okay.
Okay. It froze for a second.
It
Go ahead,
froze
Les.
and it freaked me out.
Yeah.
I lost
Yeah.
my
I kind of wanted to touch on. There's a chapter in your book where you're sitting next to I think it was a Marine. He had lost his leg in a bar, and you're talking about how much help he's gotten from the government from after coming home, and you talk about politicians who sent him there probably spent the exact amount of money that he got paid on a glass of scotch or whatever in a bar, and then you also talk about some of the meth labs that you went and you didn't have proper protection, and there seems like some disdain for the politicians and the local people towards from the police towards them. And then now you have kind of the media switching over, and there's recently that police chief that went on air is talking about how the police are being vilified and made to look like animals. If you can, try to put yourself in being a cop in the position right now, how the media is treating the police or what they're, on one side portraying the police as. Can you speak to that and how maybe you would feel given the circumstances and the way that police are kind of being portrayed in the media, and coming from a cop that is obviously, was a good cop. And then, yeah.
I tried. No, I myself, did you see the chief? I believe it may have been in Michigan where he
Flint,
put
the
down,
sheriff. Yeah.
What's that?
Mm-hmm.
Flint sheriff.
Yes, put down everything. He's like, what do you want me to do? They said, march with us. He did. Now,
mm-hmm.
I think anybody that knows me knows that I'd have been that guy or right alongside him saying, let's do this because what we've been doing isn't working. So we got to do something. We got to come up with some different ideas, and to your point, yeah, politicians have always seemed to crap on the military. It seems like when especially they came home from Vietnam, they didn't get proper care, and in some instances these days they still don't get the proper care. And you see that also even within, I came from the city has 20,000 people. Well, small town politics can be some of the most nasty things you've ever seen. Socially.
Oh yeah, because there's nobody there to even see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Right, they can get away with murder.
Well, and then the sheriff's races and stuff. They sling mud everywhere. But it always just seemed like to us that the police department was the last on the rung to get funding for this, funding for that. And so that's kind of where that came from, kind of the disdain for some of the politicians seeing military members still to this day get crapped on, and then also knowing from being on the inside that they crap on the police departments too. And then, police officers are used to being vilified in the media. 20 years, in 1997 when I started, I remember thinking, what did I get myself into? Seeing on the news, this cop did that cop did that. It was always bad stuff. They never show the good stuff that, every day goes on in America that just like the chief marching with the protesters. Why not? Why not?
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of that, defunding police, do you think wouldn't that exacerbate the problem of not having proper equipment for meth labs and stuff like that? If defunding police were to be a thing, shouldn't there be some changes? Like they'd have to probably decrease the amount of police, because if you don't have the proper equipment already, what does defunding police do? Right. I don't defunding police, and then what? Then what? Anarchy? What would you recommend? Reallocating funds into certain areas, maybe away from militarized police weaponry and tanks, but into mental health, into more training, into these other things. But what are your thoughts on defunding the police? Okay, there has to be more funding for mental wellness. We know that there just has to be. I think I was speaking with you, Mark, as what we've been doing isn't working. Mental health is the dirty little secret that nobody wants to talk about, but it's always the 600-pound pink elephant in the room. Okay, and so something has to be done now. I don't know that taking money away from those other areas is going to help, but
I don't know. The reason they started doing the militarization of police departments was because, out in LA, they had those knuckleheads that went into the bank with automatic weapons and full body armor.
Right. The tank bank.
Yeah.
Robbery,
It's interesting you brought that up, because that's a super rare occurrence, and there has to be a way to respond to situations like that. But I think what has ended up happening, unfortunately, right, is that instead of it being a specialized unit, you know what I mean? Like, there's a situation where if something goes down, you see cops on the corners with MP4s or fucking AK-47s or whatever whatever the assault rifle is. I think, and in terms of defunding the police, I think what they mean, just to clarify, is this is it's the public saying, hey, this is fucked up, something needs to change, and this is one way that we can exact change upon you, is to mess with your money and your budgets and your jobs, right? Yeah. I don't think it's a malicious thing where people are coming in and say, shut them down, cut them, kill them. I think maybe in one respect they might be saying, hey, maybe less traffic cops.
Defunding
maybe we don't need as many traffic cops. Maybe we need less police in general, but there's always gonna be meth labs.
Right. But defunding, I believe, let's just call it like an average of 5 to 10% of the budget per force around but I want you to answer this, Dutch Hammer, and talk to it. But in my opinion, I read something that said, if you defund, 8% of the Austin police or something like that, you could cure 75% of homelessness, because they could build shelters and stuff. And something like that, maybe you need less traffic police because there's less homeless people causing a problem on the streets. So what are your thoughts on reallocating funds? What's the balance? How much
Austin's
can we
got a good
defund?
history with building homeless shelters, by the way, right? They should just add more.
That could also be a completely wrong fact. That's something I just read. That could be completely wrong.
Austin does have one of the most progressive homeless communities in the country.
Yeah, they also built a mall for them right downtown.
That was a mistake.
That was a huge mistake. That was a giant blunder by the city.
Maybe to rephrase, do you think that police are overpopulated? Do you think there are some police forces that could be? Do you have too many police in some areas?
Are there inefficiencies in the force?
I don't think. No, I think just the opposite. There's not enough. Okay. But I think the problem is with the the bad eggs. That's who we need to. And now, if we're going to get rid of officers and do defunding, well, then find those bad eggs, get them out, and that's where your defunding is going to come from. But I don't know how you start defunding and taking away police officers.
Does it make the job
already
harder?
Complain about not police officers' response time. You start taking police officers, the response time is not only it's going to double,
and the ability level, right? I think a lot of the complaints are about how anybody can become a cop right now, especially when the unemployment was super low, right? And so you start going in that direction, you take away resources from the police, they're not going to be able to attract the type of people necessarily, whether that's the people providing mental health, if you're going to make changes in that area to make everybody's brain healthier, or the cops on the force themselves. You got to pay them enough to make sure that they're high quality individuals.
Yes. And we need to make sure they're educated individuals too.
Yeah.
At least a 2-year degree, have some type of educational background, maybe even a 4-year degree, but we need to start our officers need to be more educated in many different fields. Number one is, cultural diversity. I think that has to be a huge one. I can I tell you a story real quick?
Of course.
Please. Okay.
On the cultural diversity tip. Now, when I was in training many, many years ago, but the best thing they did was they had this gentleman come in who had saggy blue jeans on. He was wearing some type of jersey. He had his hat on backwards, had a gold chain, and he was African American. Well, the instructors told us that this gentleman was coming in because it was part of his probation, and he had to come and speak to new cadets at the police training institution up at the University of Illinois. So he comes in, and of course, he's being a total jerk to all of us. Pig this, pig that. Well, there were people that wanted to fight him. I mean, they want to kick his ass. Okay. And when he turns and walks out of the room, there were people following him like, oh no, you're going, comes out. He was a cop. He was, acting.
Right.
That was one of the best ways to me to show some cultural diversity and to show who the knuckleheads are in the class that are going to react to either African Americans or probationers or whatever the case may be. But
I like that training.
Yeah, more of that
that's
training.
a tricky training. But so on that piece, I think I was also reading that it's like training for police academies an average of like 21 weeks. I don't know how accurate that is, but
ours
in other countries,
3 months. 3 months
Yeah.
at the University of Illinois, and then like 6 months on the job or FTO type stuff is what you're supposed to do. But
I've seen other countries like Sweden, Denmark, those type of places do like multiple years of training. To your point on education of a couple of years, maybe like one of these things could be you could kind of have college for police a couple of years of training, maybe where it's like specifically on the job training and maybe paid for. Who knows? I think that, but more training might help as well.
Most definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think you can ever go wrong with more training. Even extend the probationary period, which is usually a year around here, extend it more. And, like that gentleman, he's not a gentleman, the idiot that killed Mr.
Yeah, right.
Floyd.
Chauvin.
Derek Chauvin, yeah.
Yeah, that idiot. He had 18 complaints. I mean, 18?
Oh, yeah.
Are you kidding me?
Did your force have a system to register people that had prior complaints against them?
Like to say if they went somewhere else, we would make sure that other department knew, or an actual system in place where
inside your police force, was there a system where you wrote up cops that had complaints against them, or was it just kind of like, forget about it?
No,
you saw a guy on the job.
Yeah,
it went in your personal file. If you got a reprimand, I got like a written reprimand once because I was in a pursuit. It turned out okay, but I didn't ask, I guess, in the proper time or something. So that stayed in my jacket. But they only, depending on the offense, they only stay in there for a little while, and then they. Now, if it was something, egregious, I would pray that thing would stay in there forever. But that's, getting back to what you were saying, having a national database might not be a bad idea for those bad eggs and tracking those bad eggs. But
I think it's a great idea for the police force. I think it would be a great idea for the Catholic Church.
Amen to that, sir. Yeah,
I think we've explored a lot of interesting things in terms of like how things could shift, right? And I think undoubtedly just, better people, there's two perspectives, right? I think the public's right now saying defund because that's their way of saying, hey, motherfucker, wake up. Some shit's got to change.
Yeah.
But, anytime you have better pay, more training, you're going to have better people. You're going to attract a higher quality of people. I think that those are that's one thing that could make things better. But there's another factor, right? And that's accountability. No matter how good the people are, power corrupts, right?
Yeah.
And there's
the
a
database, right? So you do.
Well, I'm talking about unions and how unions are able to protect police officers from actually facing consequences based upon their actions. I'm talking about the thin blue line. I'm talking about the situation where it's like, oh, you're not going to understand, guys. This is a cop thing. So we protect our brother. We circle the wagons here, and I think that that's accountability, and that's another major issue. What are your thoughts on that? How could the current accountability processes be shifted or adjusted to make things better? Or what are your thoughts generally?
Well, I think there has to be more accountability in the end, and like I said from the beginning, what we have been doing isn't working. Now, I'm not saying, just throw the whole system out, and, there's so many good parts of the system that work. There are just some that don't, like weeding out these bad eggs. How do we do that? How are we going to hold not only the officers accountable, but individual departments themselves.
Can you give some context to our listeners for what the unions do?
Are the unions too powerful? Yeah. What's up with I don't know much about the unions.
How they protect, like how this guy in Minneapolis was able to get 18 complaints.
They all work together. The unions, the prosecutors. I mean, I think. Forgive me for answering some of the questions. I think one of the issues is the unions, the politicians who are doing the prosecuting, and the police departments. I mean, that's who's doing the policing of the police, and they're all somewhat on the same team. I mean, they're arguing about what the punishments should be or if there should be one at all. But at the end of the day, it's somewhat self-regulation. I'm sorry if that's incorrect.
So an independent council set up just for that may not be a bad idea. Have one in each. You don't have to have one in each city, but have like one in each district or something. Maybe to where we're not policing ourselves, so to speak. Where there are citizen review board type things. A lot of places have those already, but maybe every place needs to have one to where whenever an officer does get in trouble, it's not like you said, they're buddies that they just went and had a beer with a couple nights ago, looking the case over. It's it's someone else from a different district or whatever may be set up in that case.
Some objectivity around the reviews.
Not someone from internal affairs that married you the year before.
Right.
Hey, those things happen, unfortunately. And in the big, I think the bigger the department is, the more nepotism there is. It seems like.
Right.
But we have nepotism in these small departments too.
Right. That's a good point.
In your book, you gave an example of how some of this power gets out of hand. I think there was an example of a guy that shot a doctor and a nurse outside of one of these that was a supposed abortion clinic, and the cop comes up and gives him a stiff elbow to the jaw, and it's like, oh, what happened? Oh, he slipped and fell. That kind of stuff that they might.
Yeah, but that guy deserved an elbow to the jaw.
Absolutely, he did. Yeah, but it's like that. It's that kind of stuff.
Murdered 2 people, innocent people.
Of course. But I'm just saying, that kind of stuff they get away with kind of might just escalate and get further and further. You know what I mean?
Sure. I think, like I said, not only like I said, fear is contagious and it makes us do stupid things when we are in a heightened sense of fear. And then if we are with our buddies or in front of, other folks that may be like-minded, it may make us do even dumber things, and a stiff elbow to the jaw or, a knee to the groin or something like that may pop off just because they're in a heightened state. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I think that was more kind of the point I was getting to on that particular one. Like you said, he deserved it because he just killed some people. But as well as I do, it happens on pursuits, especially. Everybody's just jacked up because we just chased this guy 20 city blocks, and then now it's over with and he's got his hands up, wants to give up. Well, then you see the pig pile. Everybody just piles on, and eventually probably a handcuff goes on one officer, and then the other handcuff goes. They end up handcuffing the wrong people. Fear and excitement makes us do dumb things, and cops aren't exempt from it. That's for sure.
Absolutely.
I think that can also go for people that aren't necessarily bad people, that are the criminals, so to speak, or the people that are in pursuit.
Everybody
fear
needs
that
help.
fear can make them do stupid things as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was talking about, like with the traffic stop scenario. If you have the fearful driver and occupants of the car, and then you have a rookie officer or an officer that doesn't handle traffic stops very well, then you got a powder keg, and it doesn't take much to spark that off.
No. All right, well, we're running out of time. Does anyone have any final thoughts? We'll let last questions, then Dutch Hammer. You can, David Vanderpoort, you can also give your final thoughts as well. Go ahead, Pat.
No, I want to make a suggestion. I think maybe we should wrap this part of the interview up, and then if this was a different time that we were doing it, I think there's a lot more fun questions we'd love to ask you that would seem inappropriate at the time. So I think we should wrap this point up, and then if you guys want to do 10 minutes asking fun shit in case it works.
we're not going to hang up on you, but let's you have any more final questions, anyone? We'll let David have the last word. All right, David, do you have any last words?
I just wanted to point out some things on the mental health, and if you don't mind, if you Google cop suicide, more than likely what you're going to come up with is suicide by cop. There are very few programs out there where police officers can go and talk to like-minded folk. And that's one of the biggest stigmas for police officers is telling a general citizen the dirty, dark secrets that, that we need help with. Okay. So there's just a couple places that people can go. They can go to bluehelp.org. They can go to the Marshall Project. And then obviously the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline phone number is 1-800-273-8255. 1-800-273-8255. And I'd just like to say that just if you are feeling depressed, get help. Or even if you aren't, if you saw some bad crap, that may come back to haunt you later on, like it did me. Just get help. Go talk to somebody. There's nothing wrong with getting some help and asking for help. You'll be better off in the end, and your family will as well.
Absolutely.
100%.
Less officers,
Thank you, David. Well said. That was David Vanderpoort, The Dutch Hammer. The book title, by the way, I don't know if we said it. It's Inside the Mind of a Cop.
Oh, here we go.
Inside a Cop's Mind.
Inside a Cop's Mind. There,
and
Inside a Cop's Mind by David Vanderpoort. You can get it on Amazon.
And some context for that last part, David. Can you give some context on the stats of officer suicides? I mean, it's
officer suicides. Okay.
Yeah.
Last year in 2019. 228 officers took their lives compared to 89 in the line of duty deaths. So over a 2 times rate, we're taking our own lives. And that's not just last year. That it tracks like that every year where more police officers are taking their lives than are killed in the line of duty. And something must be done. It's an epidemic that people don't talk about, and I think if we get to the root of that, a lot of other issues will solve themselves because of it.
Oh yeah.
All right, thank you so much, David. We will talk with you again, I'm sure. Take care.